Hi, and welcome to Real Trail Talk. I'm Donovan D'Souza from The Long Ways Better.
And I'm Mike Pybus from The Life of Pi. Welcome to episode 36. We have let's just say a low-key one coming up.
Yeah, especially I think after the last two very full pods.
Very involved pods. We're just going to be having a discussion with Donovan, just the two of us, about his Wilsons prom trip that he did last year.
Yeah, in May 2018.
Yeah, so, and this one is a unique hiking trip for Don because it is Sans Alyssa.
Yes.
You went with your good friend Zach that you met on the Gold Coast when you were over there working.
Yeah, that's right. So I was basically in a glorious 2-month period of unemployment after finishing up on the Gold Coast, and I told Zach that I wanted to go do a hike somewhere, and I said, I'm thinking maybe Wilson's Prom. And he said, oh, take me. So we went on the hike together instead of Alyssa, who wasn't able to take time off work.
And Zach's not, let's just say, an experienced hiker.
No, so I think he had no experience before Queensland. He did a lot of hikes with me in Queensland, but that was his introduction to hiking. So this was his first, I think, overnight hike ever.
Yeah, and you took him on a 4-day circuit.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I started with a 7-day or 8-day, Walpole to Denmark on the bib. I thought, why not, go hard or go home?
Yeah, put him through a baptism of fire.
That's right.
So we're going to break it down day by day. This is a 4-day walk. What kind of distances are we talking overall?
So overall, it's 55.4 kilometers for the circuit, plus there's 8.2 kilometers of side trips. And I think we did all of the side trips. I'm pretty sure we did.
So it's not like a horribly difficult introduction to Zach's first overnight hiking experience.
No, not if you pack correctly, and if he listened to me, he would have packed correctly.
Okay, well, we'll get onto that a bit later. So we'll start on day one, which is Tidal River to Sealers Cove.
Yep.
What's the start of Wilson's Prom like? Is there a big extravagant trailhead there, or what's going on? No?
So you go to the Tidal River Visitor Centre area there, and you sign in to let them know that you're here for everything. And then you have to walk along a road if you do it when we did it. So the peak time for Wilson's Prom is summer, and apparently it's insane. So they have like a lottery system to camp at Tidal River because there's just too many people. And we were doing it in May when things are starting to die down. And a lot of people say, oh, the prom is too busy. But when we did it, there was hardly anyone there. But the downside is you have to walk the first bit. So it's walking along a road to Telegraph Saddle.
Which, if it was the popular time of year, you could catch a bus up to. Is that right?
Yeah, so they have a shuttle bus that takes you from there, from Tidal River to Telegraph Saddle.
So not Don's favourite start to a hike then, with lots of road walking.
No, it wasn't. Look, it wasn't great, but it would be better if it wasn't like that. But the walking was nice. You got to see into a valley. So there were views. There were granite peaks on one side. So as far as road walking goes, not my favourite, but not the worst by a long shot.
And then we move on to another Don favourite, which is Burnt Forest.
Yeah.
How does it compare to WA Burnt Forest?
So there's this area has been very badly burnt, and I think you'll probably never see Wilson's Prom without something burnt, because there's been so many bushfires through this area. I think the first bit here was quite bad because the trees were basically just completely defoliated. Further along the hike, there's a lot of burnt trees, but they're more acceptable, I'd say, because they have big crowns, so they look majestic even though they're burnt, compared to some small crowned species that are often found in Western Australia.
Yeah, we won't mention those at all. But so you got the worst of it out of the way, pretty much. Or not the worst, but Don's not favourite hiking things to see.
Yeah, for sure. I should say that at Telegraph Saddle, just before Telegraph Saddle, Zach said to me, I don't have any toilet paper. So this was the first bit of, Oh, wow, you didn't really think about this at all.
Didn't think about it or wasn't told. Which
I
one?
did tell him that.
Okay.
Yeah. So the good thing was I had a smart idea. I said to him, there's a toilet at Telegraph Saddle. Have a look and see if there's any toilet paper here. And he said, you're a genius. I said, no, I'm not a genius. I'm just thinking there's a toilet here. I'm sure there's toilet paper. And sure enough, there was. So he took a bit and, he had toilet paper for the trip.
Yeah, we must point out Zach is quite a lot younger
Yeah.
than Donovan.
Yeah,
so
he is like...
a bit wet behind the ears.
I think he's like 20. So.
Yeah. I mean, we all make mistakes. But, I mean, from here, it gets better and you kind of go through a bit of rainforest, which you quite enjoyed.
Yeah, so just before and after you reach Windy Saddle is when I think it really turns on and you're like, oh, this is beautiful. There was a lot of rainforest and it reminded me a lot of Mount Field, like the lower levels of the rainforest that aren't the mountain ash sections.
Yeah.
Really just nice, lush rainforest as you'd expect from Australian Gondwana landscapes.
Yeah. And then as you go over Windy Saddle, and then on the other side it gets even better. There's lots of little creeks and even lusher rainforest.
Yeah, so obviously, with the rain shadow, this is probably where they get a lot more rain. And we did see a lot of clouds rolling over because it wasn't like the best weather on the first day for us. So you can definitely see how this side has the waterfalls. It has the rainforest that's much lusher, and you get a lot of what looks like mountain ash. There were a lot of really tall trees that looked a lot like what I know mountain ash looks like. And you can definitely see how this area was once attached to Tasmania. It certainly has the look of that kind of place.
Yeah, so lovely walking then.
Yeah, fantastic. Couldn't complain.
Don's in heaven.
Yep.
And then what you described in your series of posts about this is the longest boardwalk section you've ever been on.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if since then if I've done more, but this was like literally we were on a boardwalk for 25 minutes of just unceasing boardwalk walking. There wasn't like, oh, we stop for a little bit and there's a bit of land and then there's no, this is just constant boardwalk for that whole section.
Wow. So a fair bit of investment gone into this trail.
Yeah, for sure. I think the prom is well loved, and I think it shows. They've spent a lot of money here, and also early on where there had been that fire sections. So the prom's been dealt so many terrible blows. So there were floods that just completely washed away the track, and the work that they've done to reconstruct it is outstanding. They really care about this area, and they've done a lot to make it what it is.
Yeah, I suppose if you're putting boardwalk in, you're more likely to protect the environment, especially if there's been flooded away and people can start making their own tracks.
Yeah,
because it's not a bad compromise. 2 or 3 k's of boardwalk to protect the environment.
Yeah, I tell you what, you're probably going to be a lot more careful how you do your prescribed burns if you're putting boardwalk in.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not the most fire retardant material boardwalks. So this was through a bit of a swampy area, and then you reach Sealer's Cove.
Yeah.
What was it like going into camp?
So it's really interesting because coming from Western Australia where you don't have like forest, hard line, and then beach, this was really weird. And also the beach was yellowy sand rather than the normal bleach white sand that we have here.
So like builder's sand.
Yeah, So it looks so different because, first of all, there literally is a line. There's forest, and there's not like a transition to heath, and then it's just literally forest, beach, water. And the beach was just not at all like what I know from WA.
Yeah.
And then you walk along the beach, and then you cross a creek, and then you're at the campsite, which is basically, again, forest that's just right on the cove.
So this creek, a little bit tannin stained, and you tried to sample the local water. How was that?
Well, I think you have to, because so the way that this and the next campsite are designed, there's like a tap of water that seems to be somehow pumped from the creek out into the campsite. There's like a tap that's just constantly flowing, and we filled up from it. And this one was okay. This one wasn't fantastic, but it was acceptable in terms of taste. And, like it's cool. I like the fact that there's this creeks nearby, and we had to, wade through the creek. And I had told Zach, thing I'll teach you is that you got to walk on the outer side, walk out to the water. Don't try to walk straight across. It may seem that narrow is better, but it's not. The long way is better.
Yeah, the long way is better. So you took him under your wing, and do you think he learned that valuable lesson?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say he did. Yeah.
And what was it like at camp during the night? Was there many people there? Did you share a tent with Zach? Is he a snorer?
No. So we had just bought the Big Agnes copper spur to replace our old seed house. So I said to him, look, I'm a snorer, so you can have your own tent. I'll give you the seed house, and I'll take the copper spur. So after I helped him set up his, he helped me set up mine, and broke the zip on my tent. And this was the third night it had ever been used as well. So I was a little bit pissed with him. At one point he was like trying to hang around and look to see if he could help. And I said, Zach, you just need to go somewhere else for a sec because I'm really angry with you. And then there was only one other person at the campsite. There was a lady who stayed on the other side of the campsite, nearer to where the water was. And she had, interestingly enough, she'd been on Macquarie Island. So that was really interesting because when I was in Tassie, I was looking at Macquarie Island, and she was, someone, I've been there. I was doing some research there. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. And did Zach lay low for the rest of the night, or did he?
Did
you warm up to him a little bit more?
I just needed like 15 minutes to half an hour of just like not having him just standing next to me.
Yeah.
So, things were fine after that. There's no issues. We cooked our food at they have like these sort of square tables everywhere you can kind of cook at. So we did that. And I found out Zach did not listen to me when it came to food and brought completely different food to what I said. Not enough food as well. For some reason, he thought it was a 2-night, not a 3-night.
Yeah.
And he had a can of V with him as well.
Oh, that's nice and lightweight.
Yes.
But good energy, though. So just for everyone at home, I have to share my notes on Zach. I've got met on Gold Coast, ripped tent, didn't bring toilet paper or enough food, but makes up for it in other ways. So what are these other ways before we just Zach bash for the rest of the podcast?
Look, the guy is hilarious. He is one of the funniest people. So he's always good value for a laugh, and he's also someone who doesn't take himself too seriously. So you can make fun of him and laugh at his really unfortunate mistakes.
Yeah.
And he'll laugh with you. So he's good value.
Yeah. Okay, so waking up the next day, it's Sealers Cove to Little Waterloo Bay. So it starts off as a very coastal day, which I know you enjoy that kind of walking. Yeah,
for sure. I really like this day. I think this day is, if you've done like Cape to Cape or Cape Le Grand or Fitzgerald River, this will have a similar kind of look and feel. A lot more heath and a lot more exposed, with granite headlands.
Which is some of your favourite walking.
Oh, for sure. I love this kind of walking. It's I never get bored of it.
Yeah, and in my notes here, we've got a section of acceptable forest.
Yeah, so as I said, the Wilsons Prom has been quite significantly burnt, and yet I didn't find it as disgusting as some burnt forest in WA, and a lot of that is that the canopy, you get this nice big lush canopy. So even though the trees are burnt, when they do recover, they do have this sort of, the branches reaching out to the heavens, and you get a nice shady canopy. And that really does make a difference. It makes the area not have that stark, bleak look about it. So yeah, I enjoyed it, and it didn't, it's not my favorite. Like if I had to choose between that or the rainforest, I'll pick the rainforest, but I wasn't going to be upset about it in that sense.
What was the weather like for the start of day 2?
Started out not so good, very overcast, but it got better as the day progressed.
And from this acceptable forest, The track continues on down to Refuge Cove, which is quite unique because it is a boater's campsite as well.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because when we rocked up, and it was kind of perfect because it looks really cool in the photos. There was like a yacht parked in the bay at Refuge Cove, and they set up there, then they sent a little boat across to the mainland, and then they camped there. So it was really nice, and we ran into a sort of middle-aged couple who were just going for a stroll. Like they obviously, were at the yacht, getting off, going for a little bit of a walk, and coming back. And again, the beaches here are of the yellow sand variety. I think this was like quite yellow sandy at this particular beach. But the campsite's cool. It has like this big wall that has looks like it's the name tag wooden pieces from ships that is made into a wall.
That's cool.
And it's cool to have like a little different vibe there. And the walkers section's a little bit further down. That's under the trees. So nice campsite. But if I had a choice, where we stayed the first night was way better than Refuge Cove.
You'd have to deal with all the yachties.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they probably would have had like wine or something that we could have had. So that's the thing. But I did bring wine, so it wasn't like we were without.
Yeah, cool. And from Refuge Cove, it's an ascent up to Kersop Peak.
Yeah, a lot of granite headland walking, and then you reach a side trip to Kersop Peak, which is it's a really short side trip. I mean, you're only looking at about 600 meters.
Okay.
But it's worth doing, and you get nice views down to Waterloo Bay and Little Waterloo Bay, which is where you were heading for the end of the day.
From there, we're descending down to North Waterloo Bay, and then there's more granite headland before you actually reach the campsite. Yeah,
so it's nice walking. There's a lot of like these granite boulders that are they look almost like someone just placed heaps of stones on one side of the bay, and that's like the wall of the coastline. Really beautiful. I mean, some of it is, you can see where there's been some maybe erosion damage from rain, but it's really lovely. You walk across there's all these beaches seem to have like some creek flowing down into them. So it was good. And as you round the corner, you're quite high up, and there's just along the coast there's these really large granite boulders and headlands that you can walk across and along, and you can see the bays as you're approaching.
So very much like Albany, in a way, but on steroids.
I'd say it has very much a feel of that sort of William Bay, heading into Albany. Anywhere where there's that granite rock kind of look, it has a very similar appearance. Like, you definitely, if you're from the southwest of WA, you'll have images of home, which I definitely had.
So we've reached Little Waterloo Bay, which is the campsite for the evening. This is where the drinking water wasn't so great, was it?
Yeah, this was crap. The water was really disgusting tasting. It was extraordinarily tannic. Yeah, I'd say definitely, drink the bare minimum from here, and try to refill more from the next campsite if you're coming, this way. Obviously take enough for yourself, but if you're coming the other way, which a lot of people seem to do, they seem to do the circuit in the other direction, I'd take more water from Roaring Meg.
Yeah. Or maybe just dip into your wine reserves that night.
Yeah.
Even though it's not terribly hydrating.
No.
And how did young Zach go with the tent this night?
He went okay, except that we had a crow come and pick up like some of his. He put down his a food packet of chips, because of course he brought chips, and a crow came and just took. So we went for a walk back to the beach to have a look and climb up the rocks, and we came back. And then there was just wrappers everywhere. And I found, I had bought a pair of sunglasses that I took to India to get the lenses replaced because they were really scratched. And I came back and I found the corners were all chipped by the crow. Obviously, the sweat from my face, it tasted it was trying to get to whatever was there.
Yeah.
And, so my new glasses were chipped at the corners.
It's not a great overnight experience.
And then we had like this massive school group show up as well. They were very respectful, and they camped far away from us. We actually took the best, because we arrived first. We took the nicest spot, and they camped closer to the river. They were respectful and not a problem.
Yeah. So you guys were the rowdy ones at the campsite.
No, we were asleep early.
Okay, so moving on to day 3, as you said, off to Roaring Meg campsite. You described this one as the best day of the 4.
The best and the hardest day. It was like 20 Ks all up, 20.9 Ks all up. But, you know, the highlights of this day were the best parts of the whole track.
So you mentioned before that pretty much all the beaches had been yellow builder sand.
Yep.
But Waterloo Bay was different, wasn't it?
Yeah, so this was the first really... I mean, there were some beaches that were sort of white, but this was like Fitzgerald River, Cape Legrand sort of white. Maybe not as white. Like, I think if you maybe got like a sample from each, you know, they love to say that Lucky Bays are the whitest in Australia.
Yeah.
So it probably wouldn't compare to Lucky Bay, but without that comparison, it definitely looked very white.
And where would this rank in Don's favourite beaches in Australia?
It was very pretty. It was really nice. I'm not sure. Like, it wouldn't be Fitzgerald River level. You know,
Top
like
5, top 10?
Maybe.
Maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I'd have to think about that. I mean, if I think about beaches that are outstanding, you know, I would probably... No, you know what? It probably isn't. Because I'd put Elephant Cove and Fitzgerald River and Turquoise Bay in Ningaloo ahead of it. And that's already 3. And if I think harder, I'm sure I could... You know, Two People's Bay.
Yeah.
You know, I could fill it up with in WA alone. So
Okay.
not quite.
Not quite. But up there for Victorian beaches.
Yeah, probably one of the nicest in Victoria.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll give them that one.
Yeah.
We've still got the beaches.
Yeah.
So from Waterloo Bay, it's a bit of a steep climb. This is kind of where the day almost fell apart for both of you, wasn't it?
Yeah, so this was tough. So, as I had mentioned, Zach had not listened to me when it came to food. And, you know, to be honest, I didn't listen to me when it came to my own, how I was feeling. And as we were climbing up, because it doesn't look that bad in the book, and Alyssa and I had done much harder at the start of the Walls of Jerusalem. But that's the first thing we did. So once we were in, and when you're doing a multi-day hike, something you'll notice is that after like maybe the first or second day, your energy reserves start to run out, and then you're starting to chew through, you know, your reserves. And we definitely had reached that point, and this ascent was, you know, it just took a lot out of us. It just was relentless, and when we were both feeling weak as well, it just didn't help. And I ended up stopping, and I ate like half a block of Lindt chocolate and a pack of jerky. And I gave Zach half the chocolate as well, because I said, you know, you don't look good, man.
Yeah.
And he had not brought, you know, enough food. I think he hadn't realized that when you go hiking, you need more calories. And yeah.
So was this the point that you realized that Zach hadn't packed enough?
No, I'd worked it out earlier, but this was the day where it showed that he hadn't packed enough, because he didn't have food for dinner. And yeah, he was pretty weak by the time we got to Roaring Meg.
And it's, I mean, I've seen a photo of young Zach, and he doesn't really have a lot of reserves on him to start with.
No, he's a pretty skinny kid, in spite of the fact that he lives on a diet of sugar. But yeah, he's not like he had a lot of reserves on him, as you say.
Yeah, but as you said, this was one of the better days. So the scenery was kind of making up for the fact that you weren't feeling too great, which I think if it didn't, this would have been a pretty terrible experience.
Yeah. There was a lot of, like, you know, big mossy granite boulders. There was nice coastal views. Yeah, there were bits where we were walking through like a tunnel of heath where you couldn't see very much, but no worse than I've experienced on Bibbulmun track sections that I've rated overall as being enjoyable.
And moving on, so it's off to the Southeast Point Lighthouse.
Yep.
Which you said kind of had like a bald head feel to it, except there's a lighthouse at the
Yeah,
end.
it looks very much like Bald Head. So we left our packs at the trail junction, and Zach wasn't sure about it, but I said, no, look, I think you'll be fine. Just make sure you take your garbage out of the front and put it into your pack, because crows are clever and they know how to open stuff. And then we walked to the lighthouse, and there's these cool sort of granite boulders that are sort of wind blown with holes through them. And it's pretty cool. It reminds me a lot, actually, of the views from there. Felt like when you're walking to Peak Head and you're near the top just before the rock and you look back across. And I should say for listeners that when we're talking about Peak Head, that's Torndarup National Park in Albany. Yeah, very similar kind of feel and look to the area with the beaches on both sides. And I will say, though, that that Southeast Point was a bit anticlimactic. We got to the lighthouse and it was like, yeah, okay, we got here. Not much to it.
Didn't sell ice cream.
Yeah, so Zach was, because he was so hungry, he was desperate. And I too, he'd hit, when we talked about ice cream, it was like, oh, that would be so good right now. And we got there and I realized there was nothing there. And Zach was so disappointed and desperate, he was prepared to knock on all the doors to find out if there was ice cream there. And I was like, dude, seriously, there's no one here except for probably a caretaker, and they will not have ice cream.
At least he tried.
Yeah.
So from there, we're kind of walking along the ridgeline on the coast.
Yep.
How was dealing with the disappointment of no ice cream?
It was okay. The ascent was gentle enough. We weren't, exhausted. However, what was funny was when we came back to our packs from Southeast Point, Zach hadn't listened to me about the garbage thing. And so his toilet paper, his unused toilet paper, I should say, and his garbage was in an outer compartment. And when we got there, the guidebook was actually pulled out of my bag by a crow, and then they obviously realized there was no food. Then they went to his pack and just went to town. And there was stuff everywhere.
Oh, Zach.
And yeah, then the walking was pretty easy from there. It was it was a gentle ascent rather than the previous one, which was quite steep. But Zach was really getting worn out by this point. There's a photo I took, we got to a nice lookout point where we were looking at Southeast Point, and I was like, I need to take some photos, Zach. And he said, I'm just gonna lie down here, man. I don't feel so good.
You could have got one of your famous "you didn't sleep here" photos.
I should have.
He probably wasn't that far off sleeping at that point. From there, it's kind of you can go on the management track to the campsite, but there's also a custom-built track that you can go on, isn't there? And you guys chose that option. So
you turn onto the management track, and then you walk on it for a little while, and then you can choose which way to go. And I don't know who would pick to go on the management track. I guess, yes, it is an option. But seriously, why would you choose it when there's a purpose-built walk track? There's never anyone I've heard who says, oh man, I just wish there was more road, to walk on.
And especially with you guys going through what you did, that's probably the lowest of how you'd be at that point, not having a lot of food in you and not having energy, but you still chose to take the good track.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was much nicer that way.
I'm guessing maybe if you'd done this 100 times and the weather wasn't fantastic and you just wanted to get to camp, you just power along the management track. But even then,
the thing is, the distances were the same. It probably is maybe a bit easier terrain wise, but not a huge difference.
Yeah. So Don's tip is use the proper track. Someone built it, you may as well use it.
Yeah, exactly. Especially coming from WA where there's a lot of road walking on some of our tracks. You got to appreciate when someone puts in a track, so don't just go along the road. What are you doing?
And what's Roaring Meg like as a campsite then?
So Roaring Meg is really interesting because there's two levels. There's an upper and lower Roaring Meg. And coming along the walking track, you come to lower Roaring Meg first. And it's right by a creek. And the water from the creek is outstanding. This is, to me, the best place to fill up for water. And I ended up drinking a lot of water here because I was pretty dehydrated, I think, after the day. Didn't drink a lot because of how crappy the water tasted the previous. So, yeah, really really appreciated the water more than ever. And then 100 meters from there is Upper Roaring Meg, which is upstairs. So it's not the easiest, like you're trying to get to the campsites. You have to still keep going. And we opted to camp up there because it was closer to the toilet and also closer to the side trip that I was going to do. That Zach was originally going to do, but he was just like, I just don't have it in me to do today.
Understandable.
Yep.
So this side trip, why is this so significant?
So this is the side trip to South Point, which is the southernmost point of the Australian mainland. And having done the easternmost point when I was in Byron Bay, I thought I really got to get the southernmost point as well while I'm here.
Yeah.
And I would say do not miss this. This is my favorite part of the whole track. It's you're walking along this track that is, again, single file walking track, and so I timed it when I was walking there so that I'd be there around sunset, and it was glorious. There was just the lovely golden glow. It was golden hour. The southernmost point was bathed in this golden light, and the islands off the coast were also there. And yeah, it's just really lovely. That's the thing I'll take away as my favorite part from this trip was being able to see South Point. And it really is a must-do.
I'm sure you walked back to camp and told Zach it was the most terrible thing in the world and he didn't really miss much.
I think he was half asleep from not having food. He didn't have dinner that night.
Wow.
So he decided not to eat dinner and instead eat all his muesli bars the next day for breakfast so that he had energy.
That's really not a bad idea.
Yeah.
So moving on to the final day. You kind of described this as a bit of an A to B day, but it's not entirely bad if you break it into sections. Yeah,
so look, this day is the least eventful. It's clearly just like getting you back to the start. There's a lot of, first of all, you're walking along what was the old telegraph line, which is not bad. It's inland, so you don't get nice coastal views, but yeah, it's okay. And then there's a lot of walking along management track later on. So it does feel a bit like this day is a compromise compared to the other days, but it's okay.
But you did highlight one advantage of the management track compared to, say, WA management tracks is the lack of vehicular activity.
Definitely.
Let's put it that way.
Definitely. So when you see a management track in WA, even in like dieback restricted areas, that you will see some idiot on a vehicle every now and then. Like I've seen cars parked at Mount Cook campsite on the Bibbulmun track, even though they should not even be there. I've seen four-wheel drives driving through areas where there's no access, and yet somehow they're there. And of course, dirt bikes, the bane of a hiker's existence.
Yeah.
And pig hunters, like you find, as we said in the last bib pod about finding a pig's head cut and just thrown by the side of the track.
Yeah.
You don't get that, at least here.
Yeah.
At least, yes, it's a management track, but it is just a management track.
So they're only there to manage stuff, which is good. Well,
yes.
That's what it's there for. And then you say you come up to Halfway Hut, which you were surprised was still standing.
Yeah, because, there's been so many fires through this area. It's sort of unbelievable that this place still exists. And I believe that there was like a plaque there talking about how close fires had come in the past, and it's in remarkable, there's a missing window at the back, but otherwise it's in remarkable condition, considering.
Probably got like covered in lead paint and some kind of fire retardant material.
Yeah, probably. I mean, it's probably now an historic hut, so they do a bit more to save it.
And Halfway Hut, does that have any special meaning? Is that halfway for the day, or is it just a name that it got given?
So I think it's the halfway point from Telegraph Saddle to Southeast Point, which was previously, I think, used for naval activity. So that's why they had this thing here.
Cool. And then we move on to what, looking at the pictures, looks like one of the better spots on the day, which is Oberon Bay.
Yes, Oberon Bay is really cool. So from Oberon Bay on, it gets good again. So from Halfway Hut, you're heading along the road, and then you turn left onto this really sandy track, which is really crap. and then you get to Oberon Bay, and it's just fantastic. It's this really wide bay because I think the tides. It's quite a flat beach, so the tide comes in quite a way. But we were there at low tide, and it was way out. Then you cross Growlers Creek, which is probably the nicest of the creeks. So there's this really broad creek that all the other ones are much narrower, whereas this has like an epic feel about it. And then there's all this massive granite headlands around, so it has a really dramatic quality.
Yeah, certainly when you post them for the first time, I was looking through, I was scrolling through, and I was like stopped at those photos. I was like, that this is unique. This is a really cool place to be, and imagine like being at there compared to just looking at the photos is even more epic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And this improves the mood slightly. How did Zach respond to his bounty of muesli bars in the morning?
He was good. He was re-energized for the day, and was prepared for, I think the promise of like a pie or a burger was driving him by this stage.
Yeah. We're not quite finished yet.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a rise and then back down to Little Oberon.
Yeah, which is a pretty wild beach. So Oberon itself was quite calm, but Little Oberon was like pretty nuts. The water was churning. There's a lot of rocks out to sea. Yeah, and even on land, there was a section where the track goes through this area that looks like a landslide has just like a flood has just come through and just washed the channel through to the beach. So it's a pretty rough looking area. But then on the other side is just this massive granite headland, like it's really impressive, huge, almost like a mountain of granite. And we were looking at it going, how on earth does the track go along here? Because it just didn't look like it was possible.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where, sometimes you look at, videos or drone footage of something and it just looks impossibly steep. But then when you turn, you go, oh yeah, that's doable.
Yeah. And then past this granite headland, it's onto Norman Bay, which is the finish.
Yeah.
So back to Tidal River.
So when you're there walking along the headland, the beach, because it's such a huge beach, you don't really get a sense of scale, and it just feels like it takes forever. It's one of those things, like always the last day or that little bit just before feels like it's going to take a long time. And when you get down to Norman Bay, you walk through this tunnel of coastal trees, and that again just feels like a lifetime before you eventually get back to Tidal Bay.
And that was the end.
That was the end.
And normally at this stage you would have your famous 10 on a plate.
Yes.
But was it not available, or you just decided to go with something else this time?
I didn't fancy the look of the 10s on the plates. They looked fairly 4 and 20, to be honest. So they didn't look amazingly enticing.
Yeah.
So the burgers were freshly made. And, there's you look at it and there were not a lot of people that I was thinking the turnover can't be good for a pie. Whereas a burger, I know you're going to have to make it fresh. And the burgers were delicious.
Excellent here. And well deserved as well.
Yeah, definitely for Zach.
All right. So where would you place Wilsons Prom in kind of the multi-day sphere of hiking within Australia, especially the ones that you've experienced so far?
Sure. Look, I really enjoyed it. I think it's an outstanding walk. I think it's certainly one that's worthy of its classic status. It definitely has a reputation for being a classic walk, and it's been there for a very long time and is well loved by Victorians. I think it's a lot more remote and wilder than the Cape to Cape as a clear example, because they're probably in that same kind of category of coastal walk. Somehow I like the Cape to Cape more, I think. Oddly enough, it's there's things that you would think are less impressive, like for example, it goes through towns, it's less remote, it's not as wild. But there's something I really enjoy about the way the Cape to Cape works, and like I didn't see anything quite as spectacular as, say, Sugarloaf Rock, or the forest was as good as the Borenup Forest. And it is something that I think, while I was a bit resistant to, I did enjoy the fact that you came into towns along the way, because it was nice to have a shower and drink nice wine on the track. So yeah, certainly I think I liked Cape to Cape more as an experience, and also maybe because I was doing it with Alyssa. But yeah, I would definitely recommend Wilsons Prom to anyone. It's a fantastic hike and is worthy of being regarded as one of Australia's best, I think.
Yeah. So, or you'd also recommend doing it out of peak season too.
Definitely. I think it would be horrible because they talk about how the ranger checks your permit at the campsite. We didn't even have rangers there. But in the summer, apparently, there are more people there than there are spots. People are just rocking up. And looking at those campsites, it would be horrible if you're sharing it with like 30 people.
Yeah.
I would not want to do that.
So there you go. Top tip: go out of season and enjoy it a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really lovely in May, so there's definitely no reason not to do it then.
Back to the subject of Zach. Do you know if he's done any more overnight hikes since this expedition?
I don't think so. I had considered inviting him to Feathertop, but then I hadn't ever done an overnight hike by myself, and I thought that might be a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's why he didn't come on that one. But it was very close to me asking him if he wanted to do that.
And you're still on talking terms, right?
Oh, for sure. We caught up about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, maybe one day we'll have Zach on the podcast to do a rebuttal of his Wilsons Prom experience with Don.
He might be like a seasoned hiker by that stage.
Yeah. Him and Alyssa can team up and tell everyone what it's like to hike with Don. That about wraps it up. So, yeah, stay tuned on Facebook because we'll have a link to Don's posts, or you can search for The Long Ways Better if you want to follow them through while you're listening. Any final words on this one, Don?
Yeah, fantastic coastal walk. If you like coastal walks, then I recommend this one. And it's a nice 4 days and it's close to Melbourne. A lot of pluses.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you had any questions about this pod or any other pods or had suggestions for future episodes, please email us at realtrailtalk@gmail.com or message us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you're enjoying the pod, please give us a rating on iTunes, Podbean, or whatever platform you're listening to us on. Thank you, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.